Hello and welcome to Because Comics, the show where we take a look at all of the weird, strange, and straight up bizarre things that make comic books, well, comic books. I'm your host, Drake McWhorter. Comics are filled with random changes for the sake of drama, and the Punisher series is no exception. And although we will be doing a future video on the time that the Punisher became an angel and a Frankenstein-style monster, today I want to take a look at what I think is the worst handled out of all of them. The time the Punisher randomly became black for no reason. As we've discussed multiple times on the channel, the 90s were really weird for comics, and during this time, a lot of them were trying to be super dark and edgy. With the Punisher being, well, the Punisher, the 1991 storyline Punisher: The Final Days focused on the Kingpin and his lackeys breaking down Frank. As a result of this, Castle ends up in the same prison as his arch-nemesis Billy Russo, aka Jigsaw, who is named so for his messed up face, which the Punisher himself was directly responsible for. Well, now that he had the home field advantage, Jigsaw and his goons returned the favor by tearing up Castle's face down to the bone. The hospital infirmary was actually able to do a pretty solid job of stitching Frank's face back together, all things considered. But much like Jigsaw, it was full of scars. Thankfully, the Punisher was able to break out and reunite with his partner Micro, who had taken the liberty of finding Frank a plastic surgeon, which is really weird considering that I never thought that the Punisher actually cared about his physical appearance. Obviously, with Frank being a wanted criminal, he couldn't just go to a normal clinic. Instead, Micro found a former doctor that lost her license after stealing drugs and currently funds her addiction via prostitution. Now, Castle specifically didn't want anybody to recognize him, which the ex-doctor was able to accomplish, despite being majorly out of practice and going through drug withdrawal. After being knocked out for 5 days, Frank was able to fully recover from his skin graft, and it also turns out that the ex-doctor was an expert regarding an experimental treatment involving melanin injections. Oh, Frank was unrecognizable, alright, because now he was a black man. However, it wasn't just his face and skin that got a makeover. Oh no. This lady also gave Frank a haircut to match the look. I mean, instead of going through the effort to give Castle a quote-unquote black haircut, why not just shave his head altogether? It would have been so much easier and he'd be less recognizable. Anyway, this change kicked off a 3-issue arc with the writer of the Luke Cage series, Mark McLaurin, instantly hopping on board. So what thrilling adventure would the Punisher embark on? How about Frank Castle fleeing from New York to Chicago in order to escape the Kingpin and getting pulled over by crooked cops who proceed to beat him all while yelling out racial slurs? Does this give Frank any special insight towards literally experiencing life in another person's skin? Not really. He straight up says that he had no patience for bigots when he was white, but now he didn't like it any better now that he's black. Alright, so how does Frank get out of this? He's being surrounded by bad guys. Does he fight his way through? Nope. Luke Cage randomly appears and swoops in to save the day. Castle gives Cage the alias of Frank Rook, which, okay, is actually a pretty clever and cute name. And he works for the Hero for Hire in order to take down drug dealers under the condition that Frank wouldn't kill them. Despite continuing his war on crime, Castle/Rook was unsure of what to do with himself moving forward, thinking that his days of being the Punisher were over. Did we get any real soul-searching or something of value from this as readers? Nope, just a time skip to 2 weeks later of time spent working for Cage and his skin starting to fade. Unfortunately for Frank, the Kingpin's henchmen were able to track him down to Chicago, but thankfully he was able to take them down with the help of Luke Cage. Ultimately though, it was Frank's skin fully reverting to its normal tone that signaled the last hurrah against the mobsters, as Frank decides to take up the mantle of the Punisher once again. I kid you not, this issue's title was literally called Fade to White, and had a cover with a big ol' "He's back" on it, while featuring a white Punisher. Outside of a quick line from Cage regarding that Frank's disguise was better when he still had a tan, the story ended and Castle went right on back to being the Punisher like nothing happened. In fact, the next issue had a whole new writing team and opens with Frank trying to decide between creamy or crunchy peanut butter. This storyline added absolutely nothing of value to the Punisher series, and remains as a tale that Marvel refuses to talk about even to this day. Apparently though, the main writer of these stories, Mike Baron, insists that it was his editor Don Daly that was the one who wanted this plot in the first place, but I was unable to find a source for the quote, so I wasn't able to confirm it firsthand, and in my opinion, who's to blame is more ambiguous. To me, the worst part about all of this was the emphasis on skin color, while barely using it to say anything meaningful. Sure, we got a little bit of dealing with bigotry from the racist cops and a generic look at how low-income neighborhoods work, but it seems more insulting that Frank couldn't be the Punisher while he was black, and that he only decided to resume his mission after his skin reverted. Now, I know that it's unavoidable, but with the subject matter of the video, I would really prefer if the comment section wasn't just meh 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 SJW meh 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 meh. Let's try to keep it civil and actually give people a reason to think that comic book fans aren't just a bunch of cringy neckbeards, please. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? In fact, we have an entire playlist of our Because Comics series, so if you like this, you're probably gonna like all of those. Anyway, I hope you learned a little bit something new, and maybe I'll see you next time.